So welcome to the Skepticule Podcast. This is a recording by myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce, for the podcast, a counter-apologetic segment called Pearced Off. And this time I'm going to speak about God. Well, I've spoken rather a lot about God, but I'm going to continue to speak about God and God's characteristics. And there's a couple of points I want to make today. One of them is about God's inability to be contrary to his own predictions. So, in effect, this is invalidating God's free will. But the first point I want to make before I get to that is about God's omniscience, which is his all-knowingness, and the fact that he can't have that. It is actually a logical impossibility to have such. And by that I mean, God cannot know indubitably that he is omniscient. God cannot know that he knows everything. Because knowledge that you don't know is unknown. So God might think he knows everything, but he can't know that he knows everything. So therefore there must be some amount of doubt in his claim to know everything. For example, if you remember or know about Descartes' evil demon, basically the Matrix, the film The Matrix, whereby we could just be living in a simulation. We wouldn't know that we were living in a simulation. There's no way we can access the truth behind that level of reality. And it could just be that some evil demon is inserting stimuli into us such that we feel like we're in a reality that we aren't in fact in. We can actually apply that directly to God. God cannot know that there isn't a God higher than God, putting him in a simulation. So that Descartes' evil demon can be applied to God himself. And you can have an infinity of gods going back and back and back. Because each of those gods cannot know that they aren't in a simulation. So there could be an infinite array of these gods. Because there is a limit to omniscience. So I contend that God can be truly omniscient, and by knowing something I am assuming the kind of Cartesian idea that it is something that you 100% know without any shadow of a doubt. So Descartes reasoned that I think therefore I am. The thinking entity is I as a thinking entity, whatever that may be, that I exist is the only thing I can truly know. And God, in that context of knowledge, that true 100% knowledge, can't know that he doesn't know something, and he can't know in the same way that he isn't in a simulation from a more powerful God. So that's my first point about God's knowledge. My second point was a point that I read in a book called Impossibility by John Barrow. And it's about God's predictions. So if, for example, at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, I predicted that the next day on Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, I would be eating cheese on toast. When it came round to that moment, if that was to be a true prediction, I couldn't do anything other than eat cheese on toast. Otherwise, my prediction would be false. My prediction the day before would have been false. Now, assuming God is infallible, he can't falsify his own sort of knowledge or predictions, if you like. And of course, this is assuming that the full foreknowledge God, because some people adhere to a God that doesn't know future counterfactuals and future events, such as it with open or process theism. But in a general understanding of God, but in classical theism, God has full foreknowledge of future events. So if God predicts something in the future, then if that that future moment comes around and that prediction is false, then God is fallible. It's not perfect, and we have a problem because God's omni characteristics are invalidated. So if God makes a prediction which includes something about himself, so if God says, well, in the year 2014 on the 2nd of November, I am going to come down and have a word to Paul Orton because he's really pissing me off, and that 2nd of November comes around, and God then suddenly thinks, well, actually, no, I don't want to do that now. I want to freely will not to do that. God wouldn't have the ability to do that because it would invalidate his foreknowledge, and it would invalidate his omniscience, because that prediction that he had, or that knowledge of that future event, would actually not have been true knowledge. The truth value of that would have been eradicated. So that God cannot ever act contrary to his predictions because of this invalidation of his foreknowledge, which then means that God can't have this robust idea of free will that many theists think that he does have. God simply cannot do things which are contrary to his own predictions, and he cannot being able to do something, of course, his omnipotence is also invalidated. So 2 points to talk about today. Firstly, God cannot know that he knows everything, and secondly, God cannot act contrary to his own predictions. Hopefully something to get your teeth into. My name is Jonathan M.S. Pearce, and I blog at the blog is called A Tippling Philosopher. And as far as the free will point I just made, that's in my book Free Will, an investigation into whether we have free will, or whether I was always going to write this book. So I'd be very pleased if anyone listening wanted to buy that. And as ever, remember, question everything.